Okay, so last class we had done our second life process, which was respiration. Under respiration, we covered breathing, isn't it? So now we will talk a little bit more about breathing in different organisms, then proceed to cellular respiration, right? Because we've seen there are two subcategories to respiration. One is breathing, one is how you get the oxygen and how do you expel the carbon dioxide from your body. And the second part is how is that oxygen utilized in the body, right? So we are yet to do cellular respiration. Right. So all this we covered last class. Difference, the pathways, how does air travel till the alveoli. We did all the different respiratory organs and accessories, the function, the labeling, and this part, which are some of the extra points on breathing. Yes. Now we have to start from here. Right. Just one quick recap. So if this is your trachea or trachea, however you pronounce it, then you have bronchi, right? Okay, this is trachea. Then you have bronchi. Followed by you have bronchioles. Okay. And finally you have air sacs called alveoli. Right. Again, we have done this last class just to give you a quick recap as to where exactly alveoli is, so that when I'm showing you this diagram, you can make sense out of it. Okay. Right. So alveoli are the air sacs present inside or deep inside your lung tissue. Okay. And there are many of them. So that's why, and why are there many of them? Because this diffusion, they are the main site where the gas exchange actually happens, or basically diffusion actually happens. Okay. So now if you come to this diagram here on the right side, you will see that this is happening during inhalation, right? When you inhale air, you're taking in oxygen. That oxygen travels through all these parts, right? It will travel through all these parts and find its way to the alveoli. Once it reaches the alveoli, they're showing you what happens in the alveoli here. Okay? It reaches the ends of the alveoli. Now, every alveoli has a complex network of capillaries around them, like this. Capillaries are basically a type of blood vessels. Okay, we'll in transportations we'll be studying about capillary again, but just for your understanding, capillary is a type of a blood vessel. Okay, and there are many capillaries which are there around all these alveoli. Okay, so these, as you would know, right, the capillary, if it's a blood vessel, it's going to obviously carry blood cells. So the blood cells, they are traveling through the capillary in this direction, right? They've shown you the arrow. They're moving like this. When they are passing next to the alveoli, oxygen is taken in and carbon dioxide is given out, and they move ahead. So why are they red in color? Is because they are oxygenated, or oxygen has bound to the hemoglobin pigment, giving it the red color to the cells. Right. So this is basically what is happening. And how does the exchange of gases happen at the alveoli is by a basic process called diffusion. Can anybody tell me what is diffusion? You can tell me in simple words, it's fine. We have done diffusion in grade 9, right? It's one of the ways to... Yes, Mike, go ahead.
I'm not sure about the exact definition of diffusion, but similar which uses liquid as osmosis, where there's a movement of high concentration of movement of water molecules in the area of high concentration to an area of low concentration through a semi-permeable membrane.
Okay, excellent. Yes, that is the correct definition of osmosis. Yes, tell me, somebody wanted to say. Gautam, acha, osmosis you wanted to say?
No, yeah, she told me.
Okay. Okay, right. So what Mehak said is a process called osmosis, which is mainly used for, okay, everything became S here. Okay, which is mainly used for water molecules, right? Diffusion is the same thing, but it is without the semi-permeable membrane and it is used for all three states of matter, which means solid, liquids and gases. For all three of them, diffusion occurs. And what is diffusion is basically the movement of
I
whatever.
don't know.
Huh, tell me, Gautam.
Is this the correct definition or diffusion? I don't know. The mixing of substance with another substance due to the motion or movement of its particle is called diffusion.
No, no, no. That won't be the definition. No. So diffusion is basically the movement of particles from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration. This is the definition of diffusion. Okay, you can say particles. Or in this case, since you're talking about gases, you can just write gases here. We are discussing about movement of oxygen and carbon dioxide, right? So you can say it is the movement of gases from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration. Yes, so in case you don't remember the definition or you've missed it or anything, please take it down. It will come in handy whenever we discuss the word diffusion, right? So now you should be aware what I'm talking of. Right, so now when I'm saying oxygen diffuses into red blood cell, what is happening is basically the concentration of oxygen is high here, okay, and it is low here inside the capillary. So oxygen moves from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration, and that's how it gets picked up by the red blood cells, of course using the respiratory pigment hemoglobin. But yeah, you don't need to know all that right. All you need to know is that because of diffusion, because the concentration of oxygen will be higher in the alveoli side, it will move into the blood capillary. Same thing will happen for carbon dioxide because the concentration of carbon dioxide is higher in the capillaries compared to the alveoli. Why? Because you've just inhaled oxygen, right? So of course the concentration of carbon dioxide is going to be less here and this is going to be low. So all the carbon dioxide is going to move into the alveoli and then it is going to travel back this entire chain and be expelled from your body. Right? So this is the basic thing which happens at the alveoli level. What you need to take down would be these points. These are the features of alveoli. You can put a star next to it. It is very important. Usually it is asked as it is. So you can take down these points. Okay, I'll erase all this. This is not required. You can take down the definition of the meaning of diffusion in case you've forgotten or don't remember or anything like that.
Ma'am, can you repeat the definition of diffusion?
Right. Okay, I'll write. Okay, CONC dot stands for concentration. Short form, writing concentration. Okay, movement of particles. Why do I say particles? It happens in all three states, solids, liquids, and gases. But in this case, we are talking of gases, so I put gases in the bracket. Okay. Right, so the features of alveoli are basically it has large surface area, very, very important. This large surface area is what helps in easier and faster diffusion, right? Because there's more surface, more gas exchange happens, right? This is why you need more surface area. Okay. Okay. Second thing is it is one cell thick, meaning it has a very thin layer. It is not made up of dense cells. Okay, because the minute I say we have lot of cells next to each other, something like this, if it is there. Okay, this is one cell, this is another, another, right? If there is a complex network like this, then for the gas to pass through all of this and come out from the other side, it is a bit tedious, right? Diffusion is tedious in this case. Okay, so the fact that it has just one cell like this makes it very easy for diffusion to take place. Okay, this also is for diffusion. Moist lining is because the gases are dissolved in water, right? So there's some amount of water content which is there. Again, it facilitates diffusion. And good supply of blood. Of course, it needs the blood supply for the gaseous exchange to happen. Otherwise, where is the oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange taking place, right? Where is it going and coming from? Okay, let me know once you have taken down these 4 points, then I'll go ahead. Okay, I think most of you are done. Okay. Let us go ahead then. Yes, so there is a same video explaining the exact same thing which I just said. So I'll keep it for you to watch later because there are more videos I want
Can
to
you
show you.
show the definition of diffusion?
Sure, here. Yeah, so I'll keep this video for you to watch later because it is the same thing. They've just explained these points and this diagram. What I just explained is explained again in the video, so you can watch it later. Not very useful. Okay. This diagram is not asked to be drawn, so don't worry. You can't draw all these color changing things happening, right? So they don't usually ask you to draw it. All you need to know is that, okay, this is the alveoli, then diffusion will happen in this direction, oxygen will move in this direction, and carbon dioxide will move in this direction. That is sufficient. Sometimes they may ask you to label it. So as long as you know that this is the way it is happening, you'll be able to label it also, right? Okay, let's go ahead. Right. Now we look at what happens in some other organisms. Here the example is of fish, and of course we'll see what happens in plants, right? Okay. So in fish you have special organs of breathing called gills. You can take the first point down and you can take the last point down. The middle points, if you don't take down also is okay. I mean, not that important. First and last points are very important. Right, so fish, if you would have seen fishes, right, this is how they look like, and you have an eye here, and just above the fin or maybe below the eye, near the eye region, you have some shapes like this. This is what is called the gills. Okay, so fish also has a mouth, right? So okay, so they do take in air from the mouth, but the efficient, or what should I say, the just like we have alveoli in our lungs and we have a complicated system like that, the gills are the one responsible for extracting the oxygen from the water. So even though you take in air from your mouth, it eventually reaches the gills, and even directly they will take in air from the gills, which means the water is here. So they'll be taking this in like this. They'll be extracting the oxygen from that water and removing this back out. Right? Okay. Okay, so yeah, the same thing has been explained in these 4-5 points, that the fish uses the oxygen which is dissolved in water, right? And how does it do that? Is either through its mouth or via the gills directly, right? And when it passes over the gills, just like we have alveoli, right? Just like we have alveoli, the fish, you can equate it, or you could say that gills are the same in fishes. Yes, Tia, you had a question?
Yes, ma'am, in exam they will not ask the process, right? How they breathe and all. It's given you.
No, no, not asked, not that frequently asked. They usually ask you this give reason which is there, the last point. That is important here. Yes, tell me, Arna.
Ma'am, firstly, sorry for interrupting.
No, no, it's okay. Tell me.
Ma'am, why don't red blood cells take the oxygen? Sorry, take the carbon dioxide from the alveoli also, because it's also a gas, right?
Okay, for that, what happens is, for that we have to bring in hemoglobin back into the picture. Okay, you remember hemoglobin, right? It is a respiratory pigment. Okay, so hemoglobin has the highest affinity for gases in this order. First, it has highest affinity for carbon monoxide. Okay, followed by oxygen, followed by carbon dioxide. Okay, so now what happens is, because of course we should not be exposed to carbon monoxide, otherwise it will all be dead, right? So you cancel this out. Now next you have these two gases. So if I'm saying it has higher affinity for oxygen compared to carbon dioxide, so of course it is going to bind to oxygen, right? Which is why the red blood cells take in oxygen instead of taking up carbon dioxide.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Yes, somebody has question. You can just ask me. No need to raise your hand. Tell me. Tell me, Mike. Yes.
This is rather a silly question, but when you get a fish out of the water, then the fish stops breathing and it dies. But like if it has the gills and if it's similar to the alveoli, then why doesn't the fish survive? Because there's more amount of oxygen in the air outside.
Okay. Yeah. No, no, no. It is not at all a silly question. It's a good question, right? Don't say it is silly. Okay. So what happens in case of fishes, no, is that they take in oxygen through water. Okay. The oxygen is dissolved in water. Uh, how should I explain this in simple terms? It forms like a mixture with water, and they don't really know how to take in oxygen from the air like we do. The same reason why we drown if we go in water. Okay, because we cannot take in dissolved oxygen in the form mixed with water like that. We don't have that kind of mechanism. Same thing if you put the fish in air, it does not have the same mechanism to take in the oxygen from air. That is the problem. So that's why they would die. Right. Okay. Yes, so when I said you can equate it to alveoli, I meant that like in humans, alveoli are the site where gas exchange happens. You can think of gills as the site of gas exchange in fish. That's what I meant. I was not able to complete my statement. I should have finished that. Okay, right. So in fish, you can say gills, and in humans, it will be alveoli. Like that, you can relate. Okay, yes. Right. So water passes the gills, take in oxygen, and then that oxygen is given to all parts of the fish's body or all the cells in the body, right? And the carbon dioxide is taken back and it is given out. Correct? This is important. Okay, this is asked as a give reason question, very important. And the give reason goes as follows. They would ask you that why is the rate of breathing in aquatic organisms much faster than that in terrestrial organisms? Okay, first thing you need to get clear is aquatic organisms are the one which live in water. In case you are not aware, terrestrial ones are the ones which live on land. Okay? Okay. So now they're asking you why do the organisms which live in water, why do they are why do they breathe at a fast rate? Basically, breathe at a faster rate would be they would be taking in air and giving out air in a much faster time compared to us. Okay. So why is that is our give reason question, and the answer is here that because the amount of dissolved oxygen is fairly low compared to the amount of oxygen in the air. Okay. So when you're considering the dissolved oxygen in water, okay, so the amount of oxygen present in this format is considerably low. And because it is low, the fish has to, do extra effort or, take in more water, to get that much amount of oxygen which we would have got simply by taking one inhalation or one breath in. Okay, so because of that, their rate of breathing is much faster. That is the explanation for this give reason. Okay, have you taken down the points? Shall I go ahead? Done. Okay. Right, next we see what happens in plants. So plants, it is very interesting to know what happens is because, okay, why did this go ahead? Hey. Right. Plants, it is very interesting to know what happens in respiration is because plants also have a parallel process which we studied, which is called photosynthesis. Right. In photosynthesis, what happens is the plants take in carbon dioxide and they give out oxygen. Right. But in respiration, as I have told you in last class and I told you today also, right? In respiration, what happens is you are taking in, okay, I don't have colors. Okay. You are taking in oxygen and you are giving out carbon dioxide. Okay. So how is the plant doing both? Right. That is why this becomes an interesting topic. So plants use oxygen, of course, they need it for respiration and they would be releasing carbon dioxide. Whenever I say respiration, this is what would be happening, right? And where does this exchange happen? It happens in stomata. Stomata are basically our pores, right? These pores which are there are called a stomata. Where are they found? Do you all remember?
On the leaves.
In the leaves, correct. Right. So you have, if this is your leaf, I'll draw it here. Okay, this is your leaf. On the underside, which is here in this side below region, right? You have these pores which are present on the surface along with the guard cells, and this is the site for gaseous exchange. Okay, stomata will always be the site for gaseous exchange, whether it is taking in carbon dioxide or whether it is taking in oxygen or whether it is giving out either of the gases, it will be the same. Okay. So now the next question which you should ideally get is the fact that how does the plant know which one to take in, right? Why? Because it is taking in both carbon dioxide and oxygen, right? In other organisms and humans, fish, etc., we all don't take in carbon dioxide. We don't require carbon dioxide for anything. We take in only oxygen. But plants do require carbon dioxide in large amounts for performing photosynthesis. So now how does the plant know when to take in carbon dioxide and when to take in oxygen? Simple answer or the simple funda used here again would be the process of diffusion. Okay. Based on where the concentration of gas is high, the plant will decide whether to take in oxygen or carbon dioxide and whether it needs it or not. Like if you see this point, you can take this point down and you can take the second point down. Okay, you can take this also down. Right, the direction of diffuses depends upon the environmental conditions and the requirements of the plant. So if the plant needs carbon dioxide for performing photosynthesis, it will take in CO2. Right, if it is not performing photosynthesis, basically when it is night time or when it is, when it is cloudy conditions, there's not enough sunlight, right, when it cannot perform photosynthesis, that time it is going to take in oxygen, right? And this is an important point. Why? Because they're telling you what happens to the carbon dioxide generated during the day. Very important. So during the day, basically when photosynthesis is happening, or so when photosynthesis and respiration are happening parallelly, the carbon dioxide which is given out here is used here for photosynthesis, right? That's why they don't really give it out. They use it themselves for performing photosynthesis. Whereas in the night, when there is no photosynthesis, it is just expelled, given out. Okay. Yes, Arna.
Ma'am, at night, oxygen and carbon dioxide both are expelled or only carbon dioxide?
Only carbon dioxide, because photosynthesis is not happening in the night. So only carbon dioxide.
Ma'am, so it consumes oxygen.
Yes, yes. It
And
will
ma'am,
take
in
those.
the day, it doesn't need oxygen.
During the day, so see, these processes happen in parallel. It's not exactly time bound. So both photosynthesis and respiration will happen in parallel in the plant. Okay, whatever food is being manufactured is being broken down at some other place. Okay, so it depends on the plant's requirement. So if the major focus is photosynthesis, if the conditions are ideal for photosynthesis, and let's say the carbon dioxide which is given out from this respiration process is not sufficient, then of course it is going to take in more carbon dioxide from the air as well, right? Okay. So it depends on the plant's requirement totally. But these processes happen simultaneously. That is the point I would like to make here.
Ma'am, so it always takes both the gases, carbon dioxide and oxygen, and according to if it's doing photosynthesis, it uses carbon dioxide and it doesn't need oxygen, so it gives it away because it has the energy using photosynthesis. And in the night, as sunlight is not there, it cannot get energy, so it uses energy from oxygen and gives out carbon dioxide, right?
Uh, okay, yeah, you can put it that way also. Yes, yes. Okay. Okay, let me know once you have taken it down, then I'll go ahead. Oh, what happened? 1 second. Huh? Yeah. Oh, sorry, all my writings vanished. Anyway, if you need something, tell me, I'll write it again. Done, done. Shall I go ahead? Okay, Mahek said okay. What about Shrija, Gautam, and Arna? Done?
Done, ma'am.
Done. Okay. Yes, Arna, tell
Ma'am,
me.
just a second.
Yes, Chriselle, sorry, I didn't catch you. You're writing?
Yeah, just
Okay, okay. Tell me once you are done. Oh, yes, there are more also. Now I keep forgetting. Parvati and Arya, you are also done, right?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, writing the last sentence.
ठीक है, okay. Yes, Arna, you can ask till that time they finish.
No, ma'am, I didn't want to ask. I just wanted to say that I've completed writing.
अच्छा, okay, ठीक है. I'll still take some time to remember which are there in which batch. Forgive me till that time. Not very good at keeping count. Okay. I remember your names, but I'm not good at keeping count as to how many are there. Okay.
Done.
Done. Okay. Chriselle, done?
yeah, done.
Yes. Okay. This slide, you don't need to take it down now. What we'll do is when we'll do revision of this chapter, we'll come back to it. This is just a slide to explain the difference or some points of difference between respiration in plants and animals, right? How are they different or what are the unique features, things like that. Like in plants, all parts of the plant perform respiration individually. There is no localized area like lung, specialized tissue or organ like lung or gills present in plants. Root, stem, and leaves, they can perform respiration individually. And then during respiration in plants, because they can perform the respiration individually, they don't have to utilize resources for transportation, right? They don't need to collect the gases from all parts and then send it to one particular area so that they can, expel it or, take in the gas from there, things like that. So that becomes the other point of difference. And the third point is, of course, respiration in plants occurs at a slow rate, whereas in animals it will occur at a faster rate. So yeah, these are just some points which, probably once you read the chapter on your own, when you grasp some of the information, after that this will be useful. So right now it will just seem like, extra information. So when we revise this chapter, of course, we'll be revising it once more. You will come back to it that time. Okay. Yes. Now we come to the second part, which is basically we spoke about two parts of respiration. Somebody, yeah. Two subcategories of respiration. One was breathing and other one was cellular respiration. So we've completed breathing. We saw breathing in humans, we saw breathing in fish and some part in plants. Right? Now we talk about cellular respiration. Now that we know that we got the oxygen, okay, we learned from where we got this oxygen. We learned from where we are getting our food. Okay, this is coming from digestion, right? Digestion in humans, or it is coming, or it is being manufactured. You can even say that, right? Because in plants it is being manufactured. Okay, in plants. Okay, so now that we learned from where the glucose is coming, from where the oxygen is coming, this is breathing. We need to learn that what happens when these two combine. We've got our LHS of a reaction. If you think of it as chemistry, in chemistry terms, we have got our reactants, or we've got the LHS of our reaction. Now what happens when these two combine and what do they give is what we need to look at, right? And that entire thing of what they combine and what do they give is what is called cellular respiration. You can take down this point. That's it. The rest of the things we'll do in the next slide. So just take down that point. No need to take down the flow chart. Okay. Yeah. So as cellular respiration, as the word suggests, cellular respiration would happen at the cell level. Okay. It happens in every cell. Okay. And what is it? It is basically the oxidation of respiratory substrate. So this LHS of your reaction is basically what is called a substrate. You can call it reactants, you can call it substrate. These are all chemistry terms which you might, learn when you are studying chemistry, right? The first chapter of chemistry only you will come across all these words: reactants, substrates, oxidation, etc. Have you learned what is an oxidation reaction, or are you yet to do it?
We've done it just recently.
Done it. Okay, great. Right? So you will be knowing what oxidation reaction is. In case those of you who have not done it yet, don't worry. It is covered in the first chapter of chemistry itself. So you will be learning. And once you learn what it is, you can come and tell me what it is. Okay? That I am leaving it as a mystery to you all. What is oxidation? You can tell me, right? Once you learn. Okay. So basically what is it is the oxidation of respiratory substrate, which is basically glucose in the cells, resulting in the release of carbon dioxide and energy in the form of ATP. So basically this is what happens. You have glucose and you have oxygen. Okay. And this is going to give you carbon dioxide and energy. Okay. This entire process is basically what is called cellular respiration. Okay, this is a very simple way of denoting it. Of course, it is not one step and it is not as simple as this. It is very, very complicated, right? There's a very big cycle which happens to finally give you carbon dioxide and energy. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, but this statement translates to this, that glucose and oxygen combines. And this is what oxidation is. Whenever you add oxygen to anything, that type of reaction is called oxidation. There, I'm giving you a hint also. Okay. Right. Okay, so the end products you usually get are carbon dioxide and energy. Yes, Shrija, tell me.
Ma'am, could you explain what is ATP?
Yes, I will explain what is ATP. Okay, so ATP is basically like we have when you talk about money. Okay, suppose I give you let's say I give you 100. Okay. So I don't tell you I gave you 100. I say I gave you 100 rupees, right? Or I gave you, let's say, $100 or 100 euros, etc. I'm attaching some currency to it, or I'm attaching some symbol next to it, right? So ATP is the same thing. When you talk about energy in biology, you always talk in terms of ATP, that this cell gave me so and so ATP molecules. Suppose it gave me 3 ATP molecules. This reaction gave me 3 ATP molecules, or it gave me 36 ATP molecules, things like that. Okay. Like in physics,
Okay, so it is produced in mitochondria.
no, nothing like that. Wherever you see energy, in the biological organism. So anywhere you see the word energy in the organism, it could be coming from mitochondria, it could be coming from photosynthesis, it could be coming from anywhere. So if there is energy, you attach the word ATP next to it. That is
Okay.
the meaning of it. Okay. Okay. Yeah, like in physics, if you yeah, in grade 9 you would have studied, right? What is that chapter? I don't know. Work power energy, I think. Yeah. So in that, you always put the unit joule, no, next to energy. You say this many kilojoule or this many joules of energy are produced. Same thing. So if you talk about in terms of biology, you should put ATP as the unit next to the energy part. Okay. 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 I have a slide on ATP. A little more details I'll tell you when we reach that slide. Okay. Okay. Right. So this is our basic process which is happening, which is cellular respiration. And we have two types. Okay. Two types basically means it can either happen in the presence of oxygen or it can happen in the absence of oxygen. So it is called aerobic. This happens in the presence of oxygen, and anaerobic. This happens in the absence of oxygen. Okay. So based on whether you have oxygen or you don't, you get different products, different end products. Okay. Again, we'll look at it a little bit in detail. But yeah, just remember, if you read the word aerobic anywhere in biology, in EVS, usually you'll come across this in respiration or anywhere where oxygen is involved. Okay. So aerobic will always refer to with oxygen, and anaerobic is without oxygen. Right. Okay. Okay, have you taken these points down? Can I go ahead?
Ma'am, I am taking it down.
Okay. What about the others? Done?
Ma'am, do we have to take in the flow chart?
No, not required. The flowchart which I want you to take down is there in the next slides. I'll tell you. Not this one is not required.
Yes, ma'am, done.
Okay. Right. Okay. This is also not required for you to take down. This is again one slide which will be helpful when we do revision. Okay. The main thing you need to know right now is aerobic means it takes place in the presence of oxygen, and anaerobic would be in the absence of oxygen. Okay. So once you've read those flow charts and you've read this topic 2-3 times, then the other points will also make sense. Otherwise, right now this is all going to look like Greek and Latin only. Okay. So we'll come back to it when we do revision. So important slide, but not required right now. Okay. Yes, you can take this down. This is very, very important. You can put a double star next to it. Very, very important. Do not skip at any cost. Right? And the title for this would be flowchart, or you could say diagram, anything. Flowchart for cellular respiration. Okay. Please take down everything, whatever is written. Even if it is written 2 carbon molecule, everything, every single thing on this slide, please take it down. And once you have taken it down, then I'll explain this to you because this is new, right? So I would like your attention.
Now there's something in your screen, we can't see the flowchart.
Oh. Yeah, clear now. Okay, done. Have you taken it down? Can I explain?
No, ma'am.
Okay, okay. I'll wait.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, tell me.
Ma'am, could you please explain the 2 carbon molecule in absence of oxygen in yeast?
Yes, yes. I'm going to explain the whole flowchart. I'm just waiting for everybody to take it down. Then I'll explain the whole thing.
Okay, ma'am.
Done, done.
One.
Okay, I'll wait.
Yes, I'm done.
Done? Okay, ठीक है. Okay. So this, okay, still writing. Sorry, I didn't catch you. Okay. ठीक है. Right. So this flowchart is very, very important. Why do I say very, very important? Is this is all which will be asked from cellular respiration. Okay, of course, apart from the difference or the definition of aerobic and anaerobic respiration, apart from that, this is all is there under the cellular respiration subtopic. Okay, so all the questions under this, or all the questions which can be asked for cellular respiration is covered in this flowchart itself. So either they can ask you questions like what happens in the presence of oxygen. They'll give you conditions like this, like okay, there is enough oxygen or there is presence of oxygen. Then what happens? What end products do you get? What happens when there is lack of oxygen, or what happens when there is absence of oxygen? The questions can be like this. Or another way your questions would be they'll ask you what happens in yeast. What are the end products in yeast? What are the end products in muscle cells? What are the end products of respiration in mitochondria? Questions could be like this also, right? So whatever question they want, or they'll be really kind enough and they'll ask you to draw the entire flowchart itself, right? So whatever question they ask, the answer lies in this flowchart itself. There's nothing more to cellular respiration than this flowchart. Okay. Now, how do you understand or how do you make sense of this flowchart? Okay. For that, we'll come back to two things which we spoke about. One is we said glucose, okay, and another which we said is okay. Which color? Okay, let's take blue. Oxygen. Okay. Where is oxygen coming in from? It is coming in from breathing, right? We took it in from breathing. Where is glucose coming in from? We'll stick to humans here. So it is coming from the process of digestion. We broke down the food, and the simplest possible unit which was transported to every cell was glucose. Okay, and then we took in oxygen gas via the alveoli. The exchanges happened, and that oxygen has traveled through the bloodstream and it has reached a particular cell. Okay, so this process is happening in one cell. When I say cellular respiration, I'm looking at it from one cell perspective. Okay. Okay, so what is cytoplasm? Basically, it is that fluid in which all the cell organelles are floating. That is cytoplasm. Just recap from grade 9, right? The fluid or the matrix, it's called a matrix, right? The fluid or the matrix in which all the cell organelles are floating is called a cytoplasm. So in the cytoplasm, this glucose, which we just got from digestion process, this is broken down into a 3-carbon molecule. Why is this 6 carbon 3 carbon important? Is to show you that glucose is the bigger one, which is getting broken down into a smaller molecule called pyruvate, which has 3 carbons. Okay, what happens to the remaining 3 carbons is not required for you to know, but definitely something happens to the other 3 carbon also. Okay, so don't remember all that. Just remember glucose in the cytoplasm gets broken down into this compound. Okay, it is a compound. It is, you could say it is a type of a sugar, not required again, but just remember it is broken down into a compound called pyruvate. There are no other names for it. It's just pyruvate. So pyruvate. Pyruvate and pyruvic acid are different things. So don't, if you read pyruvic acid somewhere, don't just copy it. Okay. Like when you use those, or when you open some answer websites like Brainly or something like that, you might come across pyruvic acid. That is a different compound. They are not one and the same thing. So yeah, it's just pyruvate. Okay, so pyruvate and energy. Energy, as you remember, we always talk in terms of ATP. So some ATP molecules you will get here. Okay, now based on the oxygen conditions, you can get different end products. Okay, First, let's start from presence of oxygen. In presence of oxygen, this happens in mitochondria, right? Mitochondria, as you know, is also called the powerhouse of the cell. Correct? Why is it called the powerhouse of the cell? The answer lies here, right? Because it is giving you energy. And this energy is the one which is allowing you to do all kinds of activities. Even the fact that you are writing right now, or the fact that I'm talking, or simply the fact that you're looking at the screen, right? Everything requires energy. Everything your body requires energy to perform. So that energy is coming from the mitochondria in every cell. Okay, that's why it is called a powerhouse of the cell. Great. Okay, so yeah, what are the end products? Here you get carbon dioxide, you get water, and you get ATP. Okay, this is when you have oxygen and when you there is sufficient oxygen. Okay. Now what happens if there is lack of oxygen? Okay. Before we come to lack of oxygen, I want you to understand that lack of oxygen is not the same as absence of oxygen. Okay, these are two different words. These do not mean one and the same thing. Lack of oxygen basically means there is oxygen, but there is not sufficient oxygen for this reaction to take place. Okay, there is oxygen but not sufficient enough. Whereas absence of oxygen means there is no oxygen at all. Okay, so they are two different terms. Don't use them as one and the same thing. They are not interchangeable. Lack of oxygen and absence of oxygen are not the same thing. So be very careful of that. Okay, so lack of oxygen, this condition usually happens in our muscle cells. And what do you get? You get a compound which is called lactic acid, and you get energy again in the form of ATP. Okay, whereas what happens in the absence of oxygen, when there is no oxygen at all, this usually happens in yeast cells. Okay, why they've given you a different example like this is because this usually does not happen in humans. Okay, but in other organisms as well, the process still here is the same. That's why they've mixed up different things. Like they were talking about humans in the this and this subpart, and they suddenly switched over to yeast in this subpart. Is because this happens in all organisms. This is the way respiration would occur, but only thing is in yeast, fermentation, or basically the absence of oxygen, occurs usually in yeast. We don't really do that. Okay, humans don't have this ability to perform respiration in the absence of oxygen. This reaction, wherever you've written this in the bracket, you can write the word fermentation. Okay, respiration in the absence of oxygen is also called fermentation. Yes, Arna.
Ma'am, the carbon dioxide produced in the presence of oxygen, is it does it come from the glucose?
Yes, it is coming from that only. You would know chemical reactions, right? If we make chemical reactions like this, okay, or the other way around, whatever. If either you're breaking down water or you're forming water, so the reactants give rise to the products only. They will get interchanged. Something like you would have studied displacement reactions, right, in your first chapter. Think of it like that. So all these products are coming from a mixture of this itself, glucose itself. Glucose and oxygen together will mix and match to give you these different products. Okay. Yes. So absence of oxygen, this condition is also called as fermentation, right? This is the same thing which gives you the, lovely bubbles when you eat idli dosa. I don't know you all eat or not. Or when you bake bread. Bread, you have huge holes, right? Or that, whole kind of texture in bread. That is coming from this process. So here you have a real life example also. Okay? Even for fermenting idli dosa batter, the same thing happens. You will get, basically when you leave it overnight, you get a very funky smell, which is the production of this alcohol, which gives that smell. And you get holes, or basically a bubbly structure, which is because of this carbon dioxide. Okay. Okay, so you can remember fermentation, you can put whichever, if you are comfortable remembering bread, then put bread, or if it is idli dosa, you can put that example also. The same thing happens there. Yeah, right. So the end products, yeah, here one more thing, you can also call this as alcohol. Okay. When you do the chemistry chapter carbon and its compounds, right? You have one chapter this year only called carbon and its compounds. That time you will learn what is alcohol and what is ethanol. You will learn the difference between them. Okay. Alcohols are a type of compounds, type of chemical compounds, and they are a family basically of chemical compounds. And there are many different types of alcohols available. Ethanol is one of them. So if you just write alcohol here is also correct. It's not, it won't, be wrong in this context. If you can remember ethanol, nothing like it. Otherwise, alcohol plus carbon dioxide plus energy, which is of course ATP, right? Okay.
Ma'am, this this flowchart can come right in the exam to draw.
Yes, yes, it can come to draw. So for this, you don't really have much choice except to memorize, right? You will have to memorize the end products as it is. I mean, I can't really help you with that. Mainly because it is new and mainly because it is a huge process, right? Unless I tell you from where you are getting that carbon dioxide or from where pyruvate is getting, degraded to lactic acid. Without that, it is impossible for you to understand or, not mug up. Yes, yes, you all have questions. Yes, tell me, Arna.
Then how are enzymes produced?
Okay, enzymes is not a topic here. It is another process. It is not really a part of respiration.
But like, is it produced due to digestion or breathing?
No, no, enzymes are not produced because of digestion or breathing.
So like, they're also component formed of like amino acids, right? So how do they form?
Yeah, so that is not required right now at your stage. So that is a complicated procedure which you do not need to remember right now.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, Mahek, you have a question?
Yeah, Mama, I have two questions.
Huh.
Firstly, glucose and oxygen they meet in the cell only, right? Not before that.
Uh, okay, they can meet before that also, but this breakdown happens in the cell.
So like they both come to the cell and then the breakdown happens.
Yes, yes, they break down in the cell.
And the rest of the end products, except for energy, is all useless and is expelled out, right? Most of the time.
Uh, okay. Depends. Depends. Alcohol is expelled out in case of yeast. Alcohol, CO2 both are expelled out in case of yeast. Lactic acid becomes a hindrance for us, and here also it is expelled out. Lactic acid is
So
not exactly expelled out.
it stays in our body.
Yes, it does. It has to be
Is it
broken
good for
down
us?
further. Lactic acid gets broken down into a compound which can be expelled, something like that. I can put it. It is useful for us. No, it is not. I can give you. Okay, here again I can bring back grade 9 something here to tell you the importance of lactic acid. In grade 9 tissue chapter, you would have had that give reason, right? That athletes feel tired after doing a lot of exercise. Do you remember that question? No. Okay. Okay, so when you had
That
studied,
also,
Arna, sorry, I didn't catch you.
inflammation also happens due to that, like muscle pain.
Yes, yes, exactly. Muscle pain only. So what happens is when athletes or when anybody, when you suddenly do too much exercise, you get muscle cramps. This was there in tissue chapter anyway. No worries if you don't remember. You get muscle cramps. okay, which is nothing but a tingling feeling, or there is something gets pulled, you feel it's very painful suddenly in your muscle. That is nothing but a buildup of lactic acid which has happened. So what happens is when you exercise suddenly, either you are not used to it or you've done it after a long time or whatever reason, if you have suddenly exerted yourself, there is a lack of oxygen reaching your muscle cells. They're not getting that much oxygen which they usually need, because you are making them do extra work, right? So they're not getting sufficient oxygen, and because of that, lactic acid is produced, and this lactic acid gives rise to muscle cramps. And that's why for few minutes you will be holding your hand or leg or whatever and sitting because you are unable to move. Only when you massage that area, or you move your leg or take adequate measures to get rid of that lactic acid buildup, that cramps goes away. So yes, this is the example for how lactic acid harms us, or how it does not exactly harm you, it just causes a disturbance to you. Okay, right? As fermentation, you can always remember bread and idli dosa batter. Also happens in curd, etc. Curd, pickles, wherever you're using fermentation, this is what happens. Okay, fermentation process remains constant. Like whenever I say respiration, oxygen is taken in and carbon dioxide is given out. That is constant, right? Same thing for fermentation. Okay, yeah. So apart from energy, either the other products will be redirected to if it is required somewhere, or it will be given out. Yes, so the carbon dioxide, everything is collected, sent to the alveoli and given out. Okay, ठीक है. Any other questions for this part, or can I go ahead? Okay, I'll go ahead. Right. So ATP, if you had more questions on what is ATP, here it is. The full form of ATP is adenosine triphosphate. You can take this down, you can take this down and this down. That's it. Take it energy currency of the cell also. They can ask you as a MCQ question, dash is the energy currency of the cell. It is always ATP. Full form adenosine triphosphate. Be careful of the spellings. Be careful of how it is written. Okay, T will be capital, A will be capital. Okay, what does tri refer to? Usually tri refers to 3 molecules. So ATP has 3 P molecules. You don't remember whether it is phosphate, phosphorus, or just P. Just remember ATP will have 3 P. Okay, and there is another compound which is written here which is called ADP. Okay, ADP has 2 P because it has a di. Di is usually 2. Di or bi are interchangeably called 2. Okay. Tri is 3. Tri, if you remember triangle, it's because it has 3 angles, right? Quad is 4, like that. Okay. So ATP has.
P refers to phosphate, right?
Yes, P refers to phosphate. Correct. Okay. Right. So ADP has 2, ATP has 3. Why am I asking you to remember this? Is because of this reaction. Okay. This reaction is basically telling you that ADP combines with one more P to give you ATP. See, now this reaction becomes easier to remember if I tell you, or if you have understood, that ADP has 2 phosphorus and I'm adding one more phosphorus to give you a 3 phosphorus molecule, right? So this is the only correct way the reaction can go. And if you remember, or if you just remember that, hey, what is happening to this border? Okay. If you remember that ADP has 2 and ATP has 3, remembering this reaction becomes easy. So you will not make a mistake and make it ATP plus P giving you ADP, because this is not possible only. This is 3P and I'm adding one more P and I'm telling you I got 2P. Not at all correct, right? So you can cancel this off. This is correct. Okay, let me know once you have taken it down. Done? I'll go ahead.
Just a minute.
Yes.
Okay, I'll wait.
Yes, ma'am. Done.
Okay, yeah. So about ATP, you just need to remember this information. Usually they ask you a one marker question as to dash is the energy currency, or they might just ask you the full form, which is, just write the full form of ATP. Max to max, they'll ask you this equation. This is not frequently asked. Max, you can, just keep a note of it. That. Yeah, and if you just remember ADP plus P is ATP is also sufficient. That same thing is been just extended and given here. So that's also fine. But 90% of the time you are just asked what is the energy currency of the cell. They don't ask you many questions on ATP. Yes, Arna.
Ma'am, where is the, like, if ATP gets converted into ADP, where does the phosphate thing, does it store things?
Okay, you're asking me where does this conversion happen? I didn't quite get your question.
Like, what happens to the phosphate, the extra phosphate, when triphosphate gets converted into diphosphate?
Okay, no, that does not really happen. Di gets converted to tri. This is what
So, ma'am,
happens.
phosphate come from?
Yeah, so where does the phosphate come from is you have something called ATP receptors in the cell. They are these complex kind of structures. Okay, they look something like this. Okay, they are these machineries where ATP is actually produced. So it is not just in the mitochondria, it is produced here also. So in this machinery, this extra phosphate molecule is hanging around here. So here the conversion of ADP to ATP takes place. Oh.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I mean, yeah, you might not be really satisfied with my answer, but I don't know how to explain it to you without telling you the entire cell structure and bringing in all the various receptors and things like that, right? So yeah, just for now, if you just remember this reaction should suffice. Where this extra phosphate is coming from, etc., is I'll have to explain the cell structure in detail for that. Okay. Okay. Right. So that brings us to the end of our second life process, which was respiration. Okay. Next, we come to what is called transportation. This forms the biggest chunk of the chapter because you have transportation in humans in detail, which itself is like equivalent to one chapter. And you have transportation in plants also, again in detail. Okay. So this is why this becomes the biggest chunk uh, of the chapter. And after this, you have one more life process, which is excretion. Thankfully, excretion you only have in humans and not much in detail. You just need to learn about. You will learn about a new type of cell, which is basically called a nephron, right? Which is the units of kidneys, etc. So you just learn about nephrons and the basic pathway, which you already must be knowing through these years. So yeah, you don't have much in excretion, but transportation there is a huge detail and maybe many of the things you might be coming across for the first time. So yeah. Right. So first we'll finish humans, transportation in humans. Then we'll go to transportation in plants. Right. Okay. So in humans, you have two circulatory systems. One is called the blood vascular system and one is called the lymphatic system. Okay, what is circulatory system? Basically, circulatory comes from the word circle. So both these systems form something like a closed loop. Like for example, if you take blood system, blood vascular system, if you have your heart here, let's say, right? So there is one entire system of blood vessels going from the heart and then coming back to the heart, right? So they'll be going to the various organs, etc., like this. But the overall loop or overall structure is something like this, like a closed circle kind of thing. From there, you get that word circulatory. Okay. Okay. And what are these two systems? These are basically blood vascular, which you are definitely aware of, where the blood is going to, move around the entire body. It's going to get pumped from the heart, travel through your body to reach various organs, etc., and come back to the heart. And another, you have another system, which is called the lymphatic system, which runs parallel to the entire blood vascular system. Like if you see in the diagram here, if this is your artery and you have your capillaries and veins, this green part is the lymphatic vessels, which are interconnected near the capillaries. Okay. So basically lymphatic system acts as your drainage system. Okay, you can think of it like that. So whatever, waste materials or waste gases, dead cells, etc., all this which are coming from your organs and which are there in the bloodstream or which are there in the surroundings, they are all picked up by the lymph and they are then discarded. So lymph acts as a huge network of waste disposal and waste management. Okay. Right. Yes. First, we'll study about the blood vascular system. The blood vascular system consists of, you can take this down, it consists of the heart, blood, and blood vessels. Okay. Heart being the major pumping organ, blood being the fluid or the substance which flows throughout your body, and blood vessels are basically nothing but the tubes in which this flows. Yes, Arna, you had a question or is it from before? I'm not sure. Okay.
Sorry, ma'am, I forgot to lower it.
No worries, no worries. Okay. Okay, done now. Very. Just one point you have to take down. Right. Okay, before going to heart, I would like to cover blood and blood vessels first, then I'll come back to heart. Okay. Okay. This entire slide is important. You can take it down. Everything. Okay. Where does this or why is this important is because you get asked short notes as to, they'll just explain the components of a blood vascular system in humans or write a short note on transportation in humans. So that time you need to include a short note on everything, on heart, blood vessels. So for that you require some amount of information to write. So that's why this is important. They don't ask you questions like what is blood. Okay, don't expect such type of questions. Questions will be a little twisted, like what are the components of blood vascular system or components of transportation system. So you will have to figure out that okay, they are referring to blood vessels and heart, and I'm supposed to write short note on those. Okay, so blood is made up of three main types of cells, which are called RBCs, WBCs, and platelets. RBCs stand for red blood cells or red blood corpuscles, right? Cells or corpuscles. Okay, again I made a mistake. Corpuscles. Okay. Same thing. WBC is white blood cells or white blood corpuscles, and you have platelets. RBC, their main function, like I previously said, or you can again relate. is to carry oxygen. The main job is to carry oxygen, and they get that red color because of the presence of hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is the one which is going to attach, or going to act like a ferry for that oxygen, right? It's going to act like, the oxygen will take a ride on the hemoglobin, and it will pass on to various cells and wherever it needs to reach. Okay. So yeah, RBC's main job is to transport oxygen, and because of the presence of hemoglobin, it gets that red color. WBC's main job is to fight infections, right? There are various WBC cells. Some of them just catch the bad guys. Some of them keep a track of the bad guys. Some of them kill them. So based on what function they perform, there are at least 5 to 6 different types of WBCs. Okay, they're not just one type of cells. There are different types of WBCs. Okay, and you have another type of cells found in the blood called platelets. Platelets, they have two functions. Okay, one function is to repair the wounds, right? Suppose you have a paper cut, or you have a small cut on your finger. Okay, if you have a small cut, let me use other color. Okay, something like this. If you have a small cut, the platelets are the ones which are going to come running to the surface, and they are going to stitch it up, or they are going to make sure you don't lose blood. The blood doesn't really flow out from your small wound or whatever it is. The platelets help in performing clotting of blood. Okay, clotting and coagulation mean the same thing. So coagulation basically means formation of a clump like thing. So if this is free flowing liquid, okay, classic example of coagulation I can give you would be milk. Has anybody tried to make paneer on their own? Have you tried to make paneer anytime, or have you seen somebody making paneer?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yeah. So when you see what happens when paneer is being made, is basically you boil milk, right? Milk, which is a liquid. Okay, when you boil and when you add lime or any kind of acid to it, it becomes these kind of chunks. Okay, those chunks are what are called as coagulants. So that's what happens with blood. So once it is freely flowing like this, okay, it's usually freely flowing like this in your body. But in case of a wound or something like that, the platelets quickly go and make them into these chunk like substances so that they don't flow out of your body. That's the job of platelets. Okay. And of course you also have yes, Mike, tell me.
Normally, when like a person gets dengue, then they check their platelet count. Then why is it that important when you get dengue?
Okay. When you get dengue, they check platelets count. Yes, that is important, is because what happens in dengue is the virus attacks your capillaries, and it starts leaking. Your capillaries, okay, your capillaries are the main site of exchange of, okay, why am I writing O2? Exchange of blood between your organs and the blood vessels. Okay. So what happens is the capillaries start breaking down because the virus attacks the capillary. So the platelets, they go and they join the capillaries back together. They don't really let them fall apart. That's why they check your platelet counts to ensure that your capillaries are fine, and they are not, because it's very difficult to identify internal bleeding. If there is a wound on your skin, you can catch it immediately. But if there's something wrong inside, it takes a very long time to figure it out. So they check your platelet count. If your platelet count dips even a little, they immediately ask you to, get admitted, or they give you proper medication to get it back up.
Ma'am?
Yes.
Yeah, ma'am. In some of the medication, they check your pulse also. Why?
Pulse is for checking your heartbeat. Pulse is not part of your blood. Pulse is for heartbeat. They checking if your heart is beating properly or not. That is usually to identify any problems in your heart. Okay, if the blood is being pumped properly or not, for that. Okay. Yeah, when we do heart, no, we'll come to that. We'll discuss how do they take pulse and why blood pressure is important, what is pulse, etc. We'll have a look at it, not in detail, just have an overall look at it. Okay. Right. And next part, or the main part of the blood, the liquid part of the blood is called the plasma. Like you have cytoplasm in the cells, right? In the cytoplasm, all the organelles are floating. You have a liquid part in blood which is called plasma. So this contains water and dissolved substances like proteins, food, waste products, salts, etc. Everything else, right? If you see the diagram here, they've shown it to you nicely that plasma is usually the yellowish fluid. Okay. Then you have white blood cells and platelets, and you have the RBCs. So we have never seen blood looking yellow, right? Whenever, even if you prick your finger or when you have any wound or anything, you always seen blood as red in color. So you tend to ignore, or you tend to miss out on the part that blood also has plasma. Okay, that red color dominates because of hemoglobin. Okay, but all these other substances are also there in your blood. Okay. How did they get, or how did they get this diagram? Is basically you perform a chemical process, or basically it's just a process called centrifugation. I'm not able to write today. Okay, wait. Yeah, it is called centrifugation. Okay. What they do is basically they'll take some amount of blood in a tube, a test tube or any tube, small tube, and they'll spin it like you spin clothes in the washing machine, something like that. They just spin it, and because of the difference in the densities, the different components separate out like this. They spin it at a very high speed. It's not like they'll just take it in their hand and spin, not like that. It's a huge machine. They'll keep it there, and it is uh, you know, it is spun at a very, very high speed, and you get these separate components based on their densities. Okay. Right. So this is all about blood. In case you have to write a short note, you have sufficient material. Now, if they ask you short note for 2 marks, don't go and write everything. Just make sure you're condensing your answer based on the marks, right? Only if it is a 5 marker or a 4 marker question, you need to write all points. Otherwise, you can just write it has RBCs, WBCs, platelets, and plasma. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Shall I go ahead? Have you taken everything down? Okay. Arna, I'm not able to see you. I mean, I hope the light in your room is sufficient. I'm worried that you are sitting in the dark. Okay. 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 Yeah, don't sit in the dark. You might spoil your eyes. That's my only worry. If you can see, then take it. Okay. Next, we have blood vessels, right? So blood is a substance flowing. Now, where is it flowing through? Right? It can't just be flowing anywhere and everywhere. There are channels, or you can call them tubes. Again, take everything down. This will help you when you write short notes, just for that. Okay. Right. So they travel in tubes. And what are these tubes called? Their tubes are different. They're called arteries or veins depending on the type of blood they carry. Type of blood, what I'm trying to say is usually arteries carry oxygenated blood, right? So we discussed at the alveoli, if this is your alveoli, okay, right? Oxygen is being diffused into the blood cells, isn't it? So these blood cells which are having oxygen and now which are passed to the other cells in the body, okay, this blood is called oxygenated blood, okay, and the type of tube, or the, what should I call it, the component, the blood vessel which carries this oxygenated blood is called an artery. Right, now maybe this will make sense. This is oxygenated blood, basically blood in which the hemoglobin has taken up the oxygen, where the oxygen is attached. Most of the arteries carry oxygenated blood. There is one exception which we will see when we do the heart. right? There is one artery which carries deoxygenated blood and one vein which carries oxygenated blood, right? Okay. Then we have what are veins? Veins are same. So arteries are usually thick walled, veins are thin walled, and which bring blood from the body back to the heart. Okay, they bring it back to the heart, and these carry what are called as deoxygenated. So if it does not have oxygen, it is called deoxygenated blood. Okay. And next you have capillaries. Capillaries are what, if you see in this diagram, this big network is what is called a capillary. Now capillary performs a similar kind of function what the alveoli does for the gases, but capillary would do it for the organs. So suppose you have your organs here, or some tissue here, or cells, anything could be there here. Whatever you want to say, if it's organ, then organ, tissue, cells, anything. Basically what happens is these capillaries are there closer to the organs. So at this region, the blood will be given off. This oxygenated blood is given to this organ or tissue, right? And deoxygenated blood from this organ, tissue, cell, etc. is taken up and passed back to the veins. So this capillary network is for the main reason to perform diffusion. So that there can be transfer of blood via diffusion. That's why they are made, very thin, and they are spread out. They have more surface area and they are very thin, so that diffusion can happen. Exactly what is given here, right? They are thin walled and extremely narrow blood vessels which occur at terminals of arteries and veins. And the wall of capillaries is made permeable. Permeable means basically it can take up water. It can take up water and dissolve substances. And of course, blood, right? Blood also has water, dissolved substances, everything. So that exchange of materials between the blood and body cells can take place. So when you think of alveoli for gaseous exchange, capillary is a similar kind of doing a similar kind of job, but for blood. Okay. Okay. Done? Taken it down? Yes,
Ma'am,
Parvati.
writing capillaries.
Acha, okay. Yes, Parvati, you had a question? You wanted to say done?
Ma'am, what is the function of the pulmonary artery and vein?
Okay. We'll come to that when we discuss heart. We are yet to do heart. Now I'll come back to that.
Okay.
Yes, Mehak.
So we can say capillaries act as like a passageway from the body to the rest of the blood vessels.
Capillary act as a passageway from the body to the rest of the. Yeah, you can. Yes, they are a passageway. Yeah, their main function would be they diffuse blood to and from the body cells. Yeah. Okay, done? Done.
Ma'am, just a minute, last line.
Okay, I'll wait. Okay. What I'll do is I'll take lymphatic system. We'll do lymphatic system today. Then we'll do heart in tomorrow's class because it is a little heavy. I would say heavy topic, right? So you might be
Ma'am,
exhausted.
done.
Okay. Yeah. So we can push heart to tomorrow's class. We'll do lymphatic system. Okay. Lymphatic system, there is not much. There's just basic information. Again, because lymphatic system is pretty complex. So yeah, if you see here, you might not even know these names, right? So yeah. Okay. So what you need to know is what it consists of. Just write these things. It consists of lymph capillaries, lymph vessels, lymph nodes, and lymph. So just like you have blood in blood vascular system, you have, yes, Chrisel.
What about the heart? Like that's also a subtopic under
Yes.
blood vascular.
Yes. Heart is a subtopic of the blood vascular system. I will take it up in the next class. If you want, you can leave some space, or if you want, we'll put back the heading blood vascular system when we do heart. Okay. I thought I'll push it to next class simply because it is little huge, because I have to explain the structure. I have to explain double circulation and explain how everything moves, how it is pumped. So it requires, I would prefer that you all have a fresh, you come fresh to class rather than already being bombarded with so many things. Okay. Yes, so I will do hard in tomorrow's class. I remember, yes, I have not forgotten that it's there. Okay. Okay, so just like you have blood in the blood vascular system, we have lymph in the lymph vascular system, and same thing. Now you can just use your knowledge to just correlate the two. So lymph capillaries will also perform the same job as blood capillaries. Lymph vessels carry lymph. Lymph nodes are new. Okay, lymph nodes are basically their points. Nodes are basically anywhere you come across the word nodes, they will be connecting points like these. Okay, so there are major lymph nodes in the body. They are spread out in the major areas. In those nodes, you can say something like collection kind of a thing. You can call it a collection area. So let's say if this is one node, right? So all the waste or all the infectious material or whatever it is they've collected from this area gets transported to this node. Then the processing and whatever happens here, and then it is sent out wherever it needs to be sent. Similarly, this node, like that, you can think of it. So each node has like a sub area it takes care of. Whatever happens in that area, it takes care of it. Right. And you have, yeah, so these are just some of the examples I wanted to add here, just to show you that these are some of the major tissues or areas where lymph nodes or lymph is present. Bone marrow is one of them, right? Bone marrow, when you read about blood in detail, bone marrow is the site for the generation of new blood cells as well, right? That's why it becomes a very, very important part. Then, of course, you have thymus. Thymus is a lymph gland, you can say. A spleen also is important for red blood cells. These are where red blood cells get destroyed and produced. So it depends on whether it needs to be produced or destroyed. Peyer's patches is a special location for lymph system only in the small intestine. So again, this is just to give you an idea like where and all lymph is present, so that you know that okay, this place is, this is how the lymph system is. Like I said, it is also extending throughout the body. It's not going to be that only from this point to this point lymph is there. These are just some examples taken. Okay, right. And you have what is lymph. Like this is important. You need to know what is lymph under lymphatic system. This can be asked. Again, this can be asked as a 1 marker, 2 marker, anything, depends on whatever they prefer. Okay. Lymph is also called as tissue fluid, right? And how do you get it? Through the pores present in the walls of some capillaries, some amount of plasma, proteins, and blood cells escape into the intracellular spaces. So, this is what I was saying, right? If this is your capillary, this is your capillary network. Okay. And I said this is usually near an organ or a group of tissues or cells, something like that. So these are called intercellular spaces. Intercellular basically means in between cells. Okay, so all these spaces here, if I'm saying this are major organs, then the space between the capillary and this major organ becomes your intercellular space. Okay. So what they are saying is some amount of blood from here, from this capillary, this blood which is flowing here, some amount of the plasma, protein and blood cells, they diffuse out instead of going here. Some of them come out also here and they form what is called the lymph. So it is not something extra. It is formed or it is coming from your blood vessels itself or blood itself. What is getting leached out is called lymph. Okay. And it is similar to plasma, of course. If it is just plasma, it is going to be similar to plasma only. Only thing is not many red blood cells come out from there like that. That's why it is going to be colorless. There's not going to be much hemoglobin. So it will be colorless and it has less proteins. Just remember colorless point, the less protein point is not much relevant right now. Okay. Yes, this is important. This is the function of lymph and what does it carry, etc. Right? It carries digested and absorbed fat from the intestine and it drains excess fluid from extracellular space back into the blood. Intercellular means in between cells, extracellular means outside the cells. Okay. So in between the cells, it has got leached here. Whereas if I say this organ and the next organ is here, right? So this entire area would become outside your cells. This becomes extracellular. Any area outside that becomes extracellular. Yes, Srijak, you had a question?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, what is the use of lymph?
Okay, so what happens now? Like I just explained, some amount of blood, some amount of plasma in the blood, some blood cells, they come out, when the diffusion is happening. If this is your capillary, okay, let me not draw it, let me just write it. And this is, let's say, some organ or some tissue. Okay. So blood has to usually pass from the capillary to the organ, right? So sometimes some amount of the blood, or you could say blood substances, they, instead of going into the organ, they move out, or they are not reach the organ. So this whatever comes out, instead of it just flowing like that in your body, it becomes lymph. Okay, because if the fluid which has come out, if it is going to flow like that only in your body, you will have other troubles. So everything is channelized and collective. There's nothing which is flowing throughout your body as a whole. Okay, everything is in tubes. So this whatever excess or whatever comes out instead of going into the organ, this becomes lymph, and the major task or the major job of this fluid is basically to collect all the waste or excess fluid which is hanging around all these organs and tissues, and collect it and send it back into tubes. That is the job.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Yes.
Ma'am, done.
Right. Okay. Some of the lymph nodes like thymus, right? Some of them they act as areas where they fight infections also. Some areas, not all. Mainly thymus. Thymus becomes your main area where the lymph also fights infection. So it will catch hold of all viruses, all bad guys, and it will send them to thymus, where the thymus will ensure that they are destroyed. Okay, just example. Okay. Okay, taken it down, done.
Just a minute.
Huh, okay, I will. I think this is the last slide on lymph. Let me just check. I think there is not one more slide. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Then if you have taken it down, I think I will stop here. We'll be able to finish whatever is left in tomorrow's class. Aram se. Okay. Right. So tomorrow's class I will start with double circulation, or I will start with heart. So don't be late and don't miss the class. It is double circulation is an important one, right? So we'll finish heart, double circulation, etc. Then we'll see transportation in plants. That is relatively a small part, and we'll see excretion. Hopefully, we'll be completing the chapter tomorrow. Right? Okay. Okay. So if you have taken this down, and yeah, if you don't have any questions or anything, you can leave. See you all next class.
So
Thank
I
you, ma'am.
wanted to see the previous slide.
Yes, yes. Who wanted the
So
previous?
of the
Huh.
flowchart of breathing.
Flowchart of breathing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just show it to you 1 minute. Srijak, have you finished writing? Are you still writing?
I'm finished.
Finished. Okay, okay. Okay, I'll take you to flowchart of breathing then. This one you wanted?
Yeah. In trachea, it provides airflow to the. So I didn't understand that part.
Acha,
The
you have
last
question.
part.
Got it. Okay, 1 second. I'll explain it to you. Right. So trachea is basically like this. No, this is the tube. Then it gets into, it becomes smaller and smaller, and it finally ends with alveoli. Correct. So trachea. Then this is bronchi. Correct. This is bronchioles. And finally, you have your alveoli. Correct. So what they are trying to say, it provides airflow to and from lungs for respiration, is because whatever air you are inhaling, correct? Okay, if you go a little up here, you have pharynx, larynx, and then you have your nose or nasal cavity here, correct? So whatever air you take in, you will be taking in like this, है ना? And then finally it will reach the alveoli in your lungs like this, correct? So the trachea, that's how it becomes a passageway for the air to flow to and from the lungs.
Okay, got it.
Got it? Okay. It does not really have a specific function. That's why they just included that. It acts as a passageway.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Anybody has any other questions? Gautam, Parvati, anything you want to ask?
No.
No.
No? Okay. Okay. We
Ma'am,
can.
bye, ma'am.
Bye.